Poland's government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, is in a tough position regarding the EU migration pact. While other countries seem to have been promised Tusk's approval, Tusk and his party have been denying this, most likely because it is presidential election season in Poland, and the pact itself is widely unpopular among Polish voters. Last Wednesday, Parliament rejected an inquiry directed at the Prime Minister for information regarding Poland's participation in the migration pact. At the debate, the Prime Minister would have to show concrete documents, concrete actions of his. A little more than a week before the presidential election, the Polish people would see clearly that what they are being told are just empty promises.
Donald Tusk już zgodził się na pakt.
Donald Tusk has already agreed to the pact. Illegal immigrants are already being brought to Poland. He's just waiting until the 1st of June, after the presidential election, to confirm it openly. The migration pact will come into force next year. Thus, Poland faces a flood of illegal immigrants from the Middle East and Africa, or huge fines, at least €20,000 for each migrant rejected. Donald Tusk is throwing the Polish people under the bus because he wants to implement the German plan for migration invasion of Poland. So we are organizing. We will prevent this and stop Tusk. Poles are organizing from the bottom up. A wave of protests is sweeping through the country, acting as a resounding no to illegal immigrants and foreign integration centres. Do you want to defend Poland? Yes. Well, that's why we need to awaken the spirit sleeping in the Polish nation. This is in Jastrzębie-Zdrój in Silesia. I have a lot of friends just in France or England, and what I hear from them is really a tragedy. They don't go out in the evenings with their dogs or children. If they have a garden, they go there, locked behind four walls. The question is whether these people are able to assimilate. After all, you know perfectly well that they do not. This is a rhetorical question. We see every day what is going on. On Tuesday, councillors from the Mazovian Regional Assembly threw in the trash a petition from Siedlce residents opposing the establishment of foreign integration centres and the influx of illegal immigrants. The Border Defence Movement has announced it is taking action. We want to start a whole string of appeals against local authorities trying to work towards mass immigration and building foreign integration centres, infrastructure for migrants and the Migration Pact, so that our children can go out freely, so that we don't lose our identity, so that others don't tell us how we should live. I see this threat. That's why it needs to be fought. The government of Donald Tusk, which in recent months has been trying to bury the issue, does not really want to prevent an influx of migrants. It's hardly surprising, since politicians from his party, among them presidential candidate Rafał Trzaskowski himself, have a record of statements in which they support accepting migrants as a form of solidarity with other EU countries. It will be necessary to make the move and open up the proposal of the European Commission. We will have a whole plan, then Poland will probably be ready to shoulder more of the burden. At the time, it was about Poland's acceptance of more than 11,000 refugees, the kind of refugees that the then Chancellor Angela Merkel invited to Germany. Today, despite Trzaskowski's assurances that the pact does not apply to Poland because of having accepted millions of war refugees from Ukraine, such guarantees are not present in any EU documents.
Czy jest taki dokument, o którym mówi Rafał Trzaskowski, że...
Does the document Rafał Trzaskowski is referring to, that we are exempt from the Migration Pact, exist? Because what you presented to me is not a document from the European Commission, it is the Council of Ministers. This is a document of the Polish government, which clearly states that there is no concern for illegal migration. And I'm asking about the European Commission document, which clearly states that there is no approval for illegal migration. But is there a European Commission document? Please familiarize yourself with it. There is no such document. This is confirmed by politicians from the ruling coalition, who have yet actually to terminate the Migration Pact. I will seek a unilateral termination of the Migration Pact. I'm not interested in how our Western neighbours will deal with the migration problem, why they want to push illegal immigrants into Poland. Donald Tusk's government is also being obtuse about the situation on the Polish-Belarusian border. Please contact headquarters. The barrier will not stop everyone. It slows down illegal crossing. These people are being detained either in the border road or inland. Concrete arrangements to implement the relocation of illegal immigrants in Polish villages and cities are expected to be made shortly after the elections. Both in the media and in Parliament, these questions can no longer be asked. Opposition deputies are not doing so. For the duration of the election campaign, this issue is to remain buried. We are supposed to forget about the Migration Pact until it comes into force, when it will be too late. The EU migration Pact acts as a sort of hot potato for Donald Tusk and his faction. The government is trying to remain silent until the presidential elections. The topic is expected to be revived straight after the 1st of June, and the presumed victory of Rafał Trzaskowski, who, as he has done in the past, will suddenly change his mind, resulting in a flood of migrants ending up in Poland. Official announcements reassure Poles, in which we learn about the number of illegal immigrants storming the border with Belarus detained by the border guard. But according to the findings of independent journalists, the real situation is much more dramatic. On Election Sunday, on May the 18th, as many as 78 people broke through into Poland. The next day, May the 19th, more than 50. What's more, none of those people who entered Poland the day before were detained.
Rząd to ukrywa, ponieważ nie chce mieć problemów w związku.
The government is hiding this because they don't want to have problems in connection with the elections and in connection with public opinion, which is very interested in the topic of migration and is crucial for the election campaign. At the same time, it is very inconvenient for the government of Donald Tusk. Hence, they are hiding basic facts that you should know about. The government is allegedly also hiding the truth from Poles on a number of other issues, in agreement with the head of the European Commission. French newspaper Le Monde writes about the informal agreement. The deal is simple. Ursula von der Leyen supports the government in Poland, turning a blind eye to Donald Tusk's statements or even postponing the publication of reports hitting Poland. Von der Leyen knows how to do what is necessary behind the scenes to help, if necessary, the pro-European camp, whose opponents, at a time of rising nationalism, have the wind in their sails.
Nie ulega wątpliwości, że Donald Tusk
There is no doubt that Donald Tusk and therefore Rafał Trzaskowski are Ursula von der Leyen's investment in Polish politics. That is why the Law and Justice government has been racked with various EU sanctions for a long time, so that Donald Tusk's team could come to power. Ursula von der Leyen never hid this, by the way. As early as 2022, during the Congress of the European People's Party, the head of the European Commission publicly anointed Donald Tusk and entrusted him with the mission to take over power in Poland. Already a year later, during the campaign before the parliamentary elections, Tusk encouraged Poles to boycott the referendum on mass immigration pushed by EU institutions. Solemnly, before you, I cancel this referendum. The referendum announced by the Law and Justice government was supposed to prevent Poland from being forced to accept illegal immigrants from Africa and the Middle East, who have been storming Europe's borders en masse for the past 10 years. But for it to be binding, turnout would have had to have exceeded 50%. The Tusk-friendly media encouraged Polish people to boycott the vote.
A więc to wyobraźmy sobie teraz, że ja jestem komisją wyborczą.
So, now let's imagine that I am the election commission. You come to the polls and we tick off. You're on the list, go ahead. Which ballots do you want? I mean, I automatically give you 3, right? And you say,
Ja poproszę tylko kartę do Sejmu.
I'll only ask for ballots for the Sejm and the Senate. I do not accept the referendum card. The referendum turned out to be invalid, allowing Tusk to sign the Migration Pact just 10 days after taking power in Poland. Now, before the presidential election, Tusk assures Poles that they have no reason to worry.
Dalej pan obiecuje, że Polska nie
Do
będzie.
you continue to promise that Poland will not accept imposed migrants? I mean, that's exactly what we are doing today. But will we not have to pay? Because I remember in February you said that we will not pay. We will not pay. These assurances are what the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is trying not to hear. And her behaviour is explained by Le Monde in this way. As the presidential election approached, von der Leyen became more lenient on the Migration Pact. At a joint press conference in Gdansk, she did not react when Donald Tusk declared that he would not implement the EU's Migration and Asylum Pact, even though that legislation is due to take effect in 2026 and is binding. She preferred not to make a scandal out of it, knowing that after the elections, Tusk would comply with the regulations. And these are clear and provide for no exceptions. Another issue is the Green Deal. According to Le Monde, also on this issue, Tusk is now being allowed to make statements that will be not accepted by other leaders. Ursula von der Leyen even postponed the publication of a report on the CO2 reduction target until after the elections, although it was supposed to be published in the first quarter of this year and is unfavourable to Poland. But according to French journalists, Tusk can also count on the European Commission's chiefs' quiet help on other topics. In order not to hurt Warsaw, the Commission has also deliberately delayed decisions on regulating trade with Ukraine after June the 5th, a politically risky topic in Poland where farmers fear competition. The situation is similar with the Mercosur agreement. As the authors of the article point out, Brussels is not in a hurry to ratify it so as not to anger Polish farmers and thus hurt Tusk.
Ta presja nieco zelżała, przynajmniej w sensie propagandowym.
This pressure has eased somewhat, at least in the propaganda sense, in relation to Poland, because it would hurt Trzaskowski terribly. But later, this investment is supposed to pay off. That is, Poland is supposed to obediently fulfill all these goals, including Ursula von der Leyen's immigration and climate goals. So far, Germans have been satisfied with Donald Tusk's attitude. In May 2020, they honoured him with Germany's highest honour, the Charlemagne Prize, and last year with the Prize of European Journalists for here, and I quote, his tireless fight against autocracy, his work to defend and preserve democracy, freedom of speech and the media. This award was received on his behalf by Justice Minister Adam Bodnar.
The woman who witnessed the perpetrator's detention initially thought the man may have seen the shooting and, like her, didn't know what had just happened.
Around 9 p.m., we heard gunshots coming from outside, and we didn't really understand what's going on. And then a man came in, and he looked very scared.
The woman thought the man hid in the building out of fear. However, the truth turned out to be different.
So he pulls out his keffiyeh, and he says, I did it. I did it for Gaza. Free, free Palestine. And he's chanting this. And then suddenly the police come in and they arrest him.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
According to Washington police, there may have been more victims.
Prior to the shooting, the suspect was observed pacing back and forth outside of the museum. He approached a group of 4 people, produced a handgun, and opened fire.
The Israeli embassy posted a photo of the murdered couple on its website.
The young man purchased a ring this week with the intention of proposing to his girlfriend next week in Jerusalem. They were a beautiful couple who came to enjoy an evening in Washington's cultural center.
President Donald Trump and top U.S. officials condemned the attack. These horrible DC killings, based obviously on anti-Semitism, must end now. Hatred and radicalism have no place in the USA. Condolences to the families of the victims. So sad that such things as this can happen. God bless you all. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the murder of 2 staff members from the Embassy of Israel in Washington, D.C. Our prayers are with their loved ones. This was a brazen act of cowardly, anti-Semitic violence. Make no mistake, we will track down those responsible and bring them to justice. 2 Israeli embassy staff were senselessly killed tonight near the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. We are actively investigating and working to get more information to share. Please pray for the families of the victims. We will bring this depraved perpetrator to justice. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the strengthening of security at all Israeli embassies around the world. Jerusalem residents are increasingly concerned about their lives and those of their loved ones outside the country.
Anti-Israeli, it's basically the same. They didn't choose the Israeli embassy. It's a Jewish museum, which means the hatred from Jews and the hatred from to Israel both aligned, and it's sad.
So I just don't know what to think anymore. It just like seems like nobody thinking normally, reasonably. I don't know. I have to admit that I'm an Israeli, and it makes me feel like I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go abroad. I'm afraid to, I don't know where it's going to come from. I have kids. It's just going to make me afraid.
Israeli authorities maintain that the shooting is the result of a wave of anti-Semitic incitement against Israel and Jews around the world since the attack on Israel by Hamas militants in October of 2023, which resulted in an Israeli anti-terror military operation in the Gaza Strip.
In New South Wales, as much rain fell in just 3 days as normally falls for more than 6 months of the year. Many residents saved themselves from the rising water by climbing onto the roofs of their homes. Local services are conducting extensive search and rescue operations using helicopters, boats, and drones.
The grim reality is that the community on the mid-north coast will have to brace for potentially more bad news in the day ahead. It's not what we want to hear, but unfortunately, this disaster was major. 140
flood warnings have already been issued. More than 50,000 people are in the danger zone and have been ordered to prepare to evacuate.
We've actually had around 590 flood rescues during the course of this operation, so it's a significant number of people that have needed to be rescued. Obviously, there's been fast-flowing waters, and some of those have been done by helos, as we've seen in the media. But some significant rescues have been made, but unfortunately, we've also lost a number of lives.
Initial forecasts leave no illusions. 200 liters per square meter of rain could fall on Friday, which could trigger life-threatening flash floods.